to Timex?
Well, Zebra was contacted. I think it was
It
either
was Lockheed. It was
Air
Lockheed.
Force
Yeah,
to buy products from Timex Portugal to balance the trade deficit. So we had started out with the Timex disk drive systems. So that was the first purchase. Along with that were the Spectrum emulator cartridges. For the one for the TC 2068. That would work in a Timex Sinclair 2068. If we cut down the top of the case, there was a protrusion and it wouldn't fit in the cartridge slot on a Timex 2068. I remember we also got in one of those two orders, we got a TC 2068 and a TC 2048, the black one that was a Spectrum.
Oh,
Imagine it's a 2068 case without the cartridge port. Then I think the second order was the FTD 3000s. And there were probably more Spectrum emulator cartridges in there. We also got a sample of the Spectrum controller that plugged into the back of the computer that you would plug a cable into to access the disk system. I don't remember what else we got from Timex Portugal, but that was the start at least.
so Al and Stuart, you guys, you mentioned the 3000s, but you also got the FDD 3s, right? At some point, because I used to have one back in I bought one from some guy in suburban Rochester back in the 90s.
The 3-piece system.
Yeah.
That was the first one that we sold as the Zebra disk system.
Okay. That's pretty crazy. And you said you cut the tops off of the cartridges with a bandsaw?
Yeah, I think Tommy made a jig to do that.
Now, someone else who's not here today mentioned that he popped one open and it was what do they call it, a chip on board design. Is that the kind, do you recall if that's what you guys had?
Yeah, I think Tommy, we put potting compound into the cut open cartridge to make a flat area that the label to.
That's pretty crazy.
We were trying to be innovative back then.
Yeah, that's cool.
And Timex really wanted us, Timex Portugal, when I say Timex,
Yeah.
Timex Portugal really wanted us to use the 3-inch disk system.
I bet.
And they said we could get 3.5-inch or 5 1/4, but Stuart and I decided to get the 3-inch discs, and we got a supply of Amdec 3-inch floppy disks.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Amdec was selling disk systems in the United States for the Apple II, the Coco, and other computers. So thought maybe it might catch on, and the discs would be very available.
Yeah, I remember those things. Those were, I remember those ads for those Amdec units. They looked really nice.
And now the main difference between the first disk system and the FDD 3000 was the first disk system was basically a whole computer. And when you put the cartridge in the back of the 2068, there was a ROM in there that allowed the 2068 to communicate with the other computer that was inside the disk system controller. That one only had 16K.
Mhm.
And the FDD 3000 had 64K. And it had a serial port and could run CPM besides the Timex operating system, the TOS. Because the Atari ST also had a TOS.
Yes.
A little confusing.
Well, that one was stood for Trammell, the guy. The three had two serial ports, and
Oh, yeah, all right, two.
yeah, and if you ever opened up the three, the six, you see that the 16K RAM was just an opened up
A RAM pack.
RAM pack. Yeah, soldered on board. It was a pretty funny design.
Well, it saved them money. They
Yeah.
weren't manufacturing RAM packs.
Yeah, reuse parts. So now that Tim Swenson is here, I'm going to mention that I finally uploaded Tim's ZX zine to archive and indexed his articles on my website. Tim, you've done something like 60 articles over the course of 8 issues by my count.
Okay.
And there was something that I learned in one of them, but I can't remember what it is now.
I'm not gonna answer that question.
Well, if you forgot it, then I think you didn't learn it then.
Well, right. I only briefly learned it.
Yeah.
It was in the volatile memory portion.
That's right. I need to put a battery attached to that.
Bigger stack. You pop it on the stack.
I should get one of those hunter boards for my brain. And Keith, I did a little blog post about your gas compressor posts. So if you go to the website, you'll see it with I took one of the images, probably the clearest of them, and used that to illustrate it. That was a pretty nifty application of the 2068. I can't believe you actually spent hundreds of hours on that, but hey.
Well, can you tell me some background about what you're talking about there?
Sure. So, well, actually, Keith, do you want to talk about it? I think we lost. You don't have your audio on.
Had to figure out how to do it.
There you are.
I worked for a gas company where you stored gas in the summertime, and we took the gas out of storage in the wintertime to meet the customer demands. But we had large industrial engines originally sold to us as 5,000 horsepower engines. They were a little less than that, but we could never get to the advertised load of those engines the way they were set up. There were pockets on each compressor that could be loaded or unloaded, and we were always overloaded by our engine analyzers. Somebody complained that we were they complained they couldn't do their job properly because they couldn't measure the horsepower way that the performance maps were supplied to us by the manufacturer. So using mathematics and knowing how the engine should have been loaded, I generated a set of 40 charts that shows what the engine horsepower would be based on how the pockets were loaded on the compressors. 20 of them for injection into storage and 20 of them for withdrawal from storage. And that's what he was talking about.
So I just put the link into chat, Adam. And another interesting thing that popped up that Kevin hooked me up with was Kevin's been in communication with George Green, who wrote this adventure game for the Timex Sinclair 1000 called The Trident, and that was one that actually Timex sold in one of those red cassette boxes. And so George wrote up his memory of writing this thing and gave a little bit of hints about how to make it through the game if you want. And you can download the game from my website. I'm going to put the URL in the chat as well. Kevin, do you want to say something about your communications with George?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I listed a Timex Sinclair 1000 on eBay, one that I had upgraded and such, and did the composite and all that. And he asked me a question about it on eBay, and he had his original one, and it didn't work. So he was interested in buying the one I had, and he ended up buying it. And then he told me that he was the author of this game, and I looked for it and I couldn't find it. I was, on your site, and I think there's another one in UK that has quite a few of those types of games. And I told him, I said, man, that, is it rare or what? And he sent me a WAV file of the tape that he had made, and I was able to finally get it loaded. And then I digitized it and gave it back to him as a P file, or TZX, I think it might have been. And we were chatting for probably two to 3 weeks, and he ended up sending me his Timex Sinclair 1000 to repair. I told him I'd fix it for free, just because I thought it was kind of cool that this is the computer that this software was written on, 39 years ago. So I did that and got it back to him, and he actually sent me the one that he bought from me on eBay. He sent that back to me and said, no refunds, just I only need one of them. And so that was kind of cool. And maybe a little bit after that, I dug out my 2040, that little thermal printer.
Yeah.
And just, I like to get my stuff out every year or so, just to play with it, make sure it all still works. And I printed out the listing.
Oh.
And because he'd mentioned that he didn't have the source code, the latest version. So I printed that out, and I asked him, I said, do you want a copy of it? Or, on that little paper? And he goes, yeah, it's the only thing he didn't have yet. So I mailed that to him the other day, and he sent me a thank you, that I had gotten it. And yeah, just a really nice guy, lives out in Coronado, California. And
yeah,
I asked him how he got involved with Timex, was he, if he was an employee or whatever. He said he was really into adventure games back then, and he had written one for, I think he said, the TRS-80, and then he got the Timex Sinclair, so we ported it to that, and he seen an ad in a magazine that was Timex looking for software submissions, and he said he submitted it, and within a couple of days they contacted him and with contracts and stuff like that, and bought the rights to his game.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, and then he also, this part I'm a little unclear of yet, but he said they sent him a Spectrum, but it was like a US version.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in the middle of a graphic adventure game when, and he goes, I was 50% done when they pulled the pin on the project and got out of the computer business, which is to me about the same time as the Sinclair, the 2068. But he doesn't, he keeps referring to it as a Spectrum. So I don't know if there was ever a Ntsc version of a Spectrum.
Yeah, so there was. Timex had a few of them. Actually, I'm going to see if I can get Neil to unmute, because Neil knew somebody in Florida, a guy named Eric Johnson, who had a relative at Timex. And when Timex shut down, Eric got from his relative a bunch of stuff. I mean, just drawers and drawers of stuff. And Neil has been sending some of that to me. So now I have a bunch of stuff. I have like a little parts drawer full of SCLDs for the Timex Sinclair 1500, for instance. But anyway, one of the things that Neil sent me was a Ntsc Spectrum, and there are at least a few of them. If you Google it, you'll find somebody wrote a web page about it. And then there was a bunch of sort of speculation on the web page about how this thing came to be. But it's my suspicion that Timex got them from Sinclair. I mean, Timex was manufacturing them for Sinclair at a point. So
now these these would have been prototypes of like what they were going to make and release here in the States?
No, this is a real deal Spectrum,
Oh,
but the ULA chip on it will put out an NTSC video signal. Yeah. So there's a specific ULA part number that I'll have to dig it up. And I haven't actually turned the one on that Neil sent me because it's 40 some odd years old. But it's it's actually, and the one that he sent me was never even finished. They didn't even finish assembling it. It's just the circuit board is screwed into the enclosure, but they didn't put the membrane down. They didn't put the squishy keyboard on. They didn't glue on the little metal faceplate. It's sort of in this quasi-assembled status. But yeah, that makes perfect sense, Kevin. I think I heard something similar from someone else that they got sent to Spectrum as well in order to.
well, there was something I wanted to bring up today about like, does anyone have this book?
Oh yeah.
So I was looking at what was I looking at? I was looking at the Time Designs magazine from November 1986, and the author of the book wrote a little retrospective, and he talks about how he wrote the book not using a Timex 2068 at all. He was using a Spectrum because they weren't released yet.
Yeah.
And how he actually received his 2068 in the mail the day he sent off the manuscript for the book, which is kind of amusing. But I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, and Adam, both that book and the one that comes after it are not quite right because
this one.
Because both of those folks were not working with a 2068, but they were working from a Spectrum, and they were working from the specs of what Timex intended to do, but did not actually do in the 2068.
I was not aware of this.
Yeah, there's a couple details, especially when it comes to the extended memory options. There was an intended way that they wanted to do it, but it ended up not being done that way. And there's actually a 5-part article series by a guy, Wes Borzowski, who's from out near Endicott, New York. He used to work at IBM, and he sort of reverse engineered from the ROM and some of the parts in the computer how the extended memory system was supposed to work and how it actually ended up working. Yeah, so it's pretty cool, those little tiny details. So Kevin, do you think you can convince George to join us sometime?
I've asked him a couple of times, and he kind of skirts around that. So I even said, just even if you just want to listen in and whatever, but he basically right after he was done with the software, and he actually went to school for computer science.
Oh.
He ended up writing software to do horse betting odds.
Interesting.
And he showed me the link, and I'll have to dig it out. And if I can find it, I'll send it to the group. But after that, he really didn't do anything with computers. He does a lot of websites and things like that as hobbies.
Huh.
But he's into track, and I think he was the head coach of the track team in Coronado there. And
oh, how crazy.
Yeah, if you Google George Green Coronado,
yeah,
it will bring up, he was in the running for most interesting man in Coronado, and it kind of gives you a little bit of history about the guy. I think he's like 75, 80 years old. He's just a super nice guy to kind of catch up and talk about things, and just a stranger, but we had so much in common.
That's cool. Hey, so Neil, you asked about the black 2068. That I think that's the same black Portuguese 2048 that Al mentioned earlier. Al, is Al still with us?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, the 2048 was the Spectrum in a black 2068 case, but with the cartridge port cut off. There was no cartridge port.
Okay.
A short
Neil says
case.
his is 2068. Neil, does yours have a cartridge port? It has a port. Okay. So I think I know which one you have, Neil. There was a black Portuguese 2068 with the cartridge port.
Was it a TS 2068?
No, I think it's a TC.
2068.
Oh, and Neil's saying PAL. Looks like PAL was scrubbed off. I wonder if that was imported by English Micro, maybe.
It could have been the English Micro connection
Yeah, because they did some importing too.
because they were selling interface ones and micro drives also.
Right. Yes, it's right. So there's somebody out there who has, an interface one and a micro drive. Oh,
I have
Keith.
one.
Keith knows about the interface one and the micro drive. Did you interface yours to the 2068, Keith? You're
I tried, I wasn't real successful doing that. I changed the ROM in the interface one, rewrote it to work with the 2068. The best I ever did was get the OS 64 come up with the black screen, the white letters, and then it crashed, and I sort of lost interest after spending a lot of time on that.
well, and you did a lot of stuff. I mean, I was just looking at your you sent me that document about the Spectrum DOS and the Timex DOS for the Airco. And
Yeah.
it sounded like you had done some similar work.
Most all of my work was involving the Airco operating system.
Yeah. That's
I
cool.
just come across something today that I don't think I ever read before, but Jack Doheny put that information in one of his manuals about it's called SpecDOS, and I just saw it today for the first time. I never saw it before. He sent me the manuals for his software that he was selling. He had in there, if you like this software, send Keith $10. But I never got a dime.
Man, well, those are the days, huh?
Yeah.
So Adam and Tim, you guys volunteered to type in the music programs from Oleg's book?
Are you talking about the 30 music programs?
Yes.
I'll type in all the
Yeah,
short ones if Tim types in the long ones.
I'm starting from the beginning. I've done first four. It was like A, B, and C. They're relatively easy to do. So I'll continue working on.
I can't understand you, Tim.
Time and breaks.
Tim, your audio's really messed up.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, much
yeah.
better.
Yeah,
Yes.
great.
A second.
What was it that you said? If you, now I
All right,
can't
so I
hear
took
you.
the headphone off.
No, yeah, we can hear you.
Before we stray too far from the topic, the NTSC Spectrums, I believe, were sold in some European countries and in South America.
The NTSC ones. Who else has NTSC?
This is what someone told me on the group,
Okay.
and I don't remember which country, but some countries use NTSC televisions rather than PAL or CCAM.
Well, it might be South American countries.
Yeah, like I said, it might be Brazil, it might be Venezuela.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't remember which country. It might even be Mexico.
I just posted a link. There's a guy selling 2 of the chips right now, NTSC chips on the Spectrum for the link on Sell My Retro.
Yeah, and
They've
that's
got
the
crystal.
If you Google that part number, you'll find that webpage I mentioned. Also, Neil wants to know the difference between PAL and NTSC. Okay, so Neil, PAL, it stands for phase alternate line, if I recall correctly, and it is 625 lines high. It's the English TV standard. NTSC, my engineer friends would joke that it stood for never twice the same color. And that's a 525 line standard. You could, if you jiggered your TV right, get it to tune in a PAL signal on something in the UHF, but it would be black and white. In the 5060s, right, the PAL is 50 hertz, which means that it's updated 50 times a second, and NTSC is 60 hertz. And that relates to our electrical standards. In England, it was 50 hertz power. And so you had that scan rate problem as well. So
I just pulled up the Wikipedia page for NTSC.
Yes.
And it kind of shocked to see how many South American countries used it. And also apparently a lot of them have been in the process of abandoning it in very recent years, like since 2015 to now. There's a list of the countries that have abandoned it in like 2017, 2018, or scheduled to do it, like say by December 2020. So they just did it. I don't know if they kept two systems for a period of time when they switched. I imagine they had to, so they don't make everybody's TVs useless all of a sudden. So it may have been a gradual process, but it is interesting that so many countries in South America used NTSC. So
Pretty much all the Americas did except for Brazil. And even parts of Brazil used NTSC.
Did they? What else did Brazil use?
They use PAL.
Okay. Wow, that must have been
If
interesting.
that's one of the reasons why you see so many of the Brazilian clones of computers. Most all those are PAL and work just fine in Europe.
Okay.
They're hard to get to work in American TVs.
Yeah. And Neil, you can get a just about any modern TV, one of those LCD TVs will do PAL or NTSC. Like I have this little monitor that I use with my computer, and Adam has the same one, and it will auto tune to PAL or NTSC depending upon what you put into it.
oh, I'd like to get that model in the chat. If you
Oh,
can.
okay. Okay, I'll dig up the link.
Yeah.
It's what, like a 10-inch? Adam?
It's a 12-inch monitor, and it works really good, like you said. But also, although I wasn't even aware that it could do PAL and NTSC, but it has a whole bunch of inputs. You can do composite and HD, which is, and I use it with my RGB, so my 2068. So I have a converter, and then when I do RGB for like 68 column mode stuff, or even just regular stuff, it works sharp, really sharp. It looks great, and it's not so big that it looks like the pixels look too big. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So because it's small.
Ingo, it's made by eYoYo. I'll bring up my my link for it. So Adam, did you type in any of those programs yet?
Oh, I finished the whole book already. I did it all this afternoon. No, I am going to type in like some of the short ones, like that are maybe I don't even think there is one that's short. That's for that uses the sound command. I think all the short ones use the beep command, so they don't actually use the actual nice sound of the system. But I'm just going to try one because I don't know if anyone followed my link that went to like some of the long programs, but it was like 7 pages long for the longest one, and I don't mean 7 pages of like just partial pages full of text. I mean, they're very full.
7 pages of data statements.
It was interesting to me when I was looking up the author that He was a physicist over in West Virginia University, and I was like, because I was thinking maybe I could try to find him if he was still alive, but he passed away in 2009. So I was thinking maybe he'd have a cassette or something with all of his programs on it.
And did you read up a little bit about him? Because he kind of struck me as a little bit of a crank when I read him.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't get that impression.
Yeah, like the science that he pursued was perhaps just a little bit tinfoil hatty.
Oh, I didn't get that impression. Maybe because I'm the same kind of way. I don't know. But if there's anyone actually interested in typing in a program like that, I mean, I guess I should back up here. Do people actually type in programs from these books or any of the magazines? Do you sometimes? Okay.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I've started a couple of years ago typing in the programs from the magazines too, just because I'm interested in seeing how they run.
I think was it you who put a link one time that's linked to a Sinclair website that had programs that hadn't been typed in?
That was Tim. That was Tim. That's type in something.
Yeah, there was this is all QL Spectrum and other related type-ins. Someone over the UK has started to say, okay, here's all the magazines, here's all the articles, here's all the programs. Let's go ahead and catalog them and start typing in. For those longer programs also, because it's been OCR, that might be useful to type it in, but then you've got to go through and spell check everything and make sure. So sometimes it's easier and faster just to type it in from scratch.
Yeah, I agree. I've done some of the OCR and tried it with like on the Atari systems, on the Atari computers, and it's easier just to retype it. It just is. You introduce so many errors that you don't catch. Or you beg someone else to type in. Okay, Tim.
I'm a touch typist, so it's not that big a deal. Just look over and hope that I do most of it pretty accurately.
Can you touch type on the actual computer, the real hardware, or you do it some other way?
I know I'm actually doing it in just a text editor, Featherpad actually in Linux, and then run it through a tool to get it to become a TZX file or TAP file.
Now, I thought that only could work with it wouldn't use the sound command and stuff, because any of the stuff that's built into.
Well, so Tim actually did the work. He read the article. You're talking about ZMake base, and Tim edited. You wrote a bash script, I think.
Yeah, just a shell script. So basically, it's the bracket symbol. One little bracket symbol is the equivalent of the sound command. So if you took a Spectrum program,
I remember you talking about this in your article. Actually,
you'd see bracket instead of sound. So I just wrote a shell script that goes through the basic program, the text file, replaces every single sound command with a bracket. Then when you run through ZMake base, BAS, it treats it just fine. And if you load it in a Spectrum, it won't work. But you load it in 26.8, works fine. It's how they interpret that particular character.
Yeah.
I think there were 5 or 6 different characters. So I did the shell script that looks for all these keywords, converts into a proper character, so that the tool, ZMake base, will then run just fine. And then you load into a 26.8. It looks great.
Right. Okay.
I also wanted to mention earlier that someone mentioned about the adventure program. You had someone had a .p file, and you can actually generate a basic listing from a .p file. Jack Ratz wrote a program called ZX List or ZXAWin List, something like that. That's a simple C program, compiles a number of systems, it's available, and it'll take any P file, then to generate a list, basic program listing.
That's cool.
What does it do with the graphic symbols?
Not too sure what it does. It might do, since a lot of the basic tools did that funny slash space is this and slash single quote is something, it might convert it back into that. That was fairly common back when he wrote this. That ZX basic program Boreal does uses a very similar thing to what ZMake BAS does, or even including the ones for ZX81.
That reminds me, Tim, I was going to ask you, had you considered taking the mods that you did to Boreal Basic and trying to get them rolled into the, into the compiler? He's got it on the GitHub, I think. I think it's on GitHub.
Oh, possibly. It was really, all I ever did was basically, it wasn't a code change at all.
It was the
Well,
ROM calls,
I
right?
just changed a couple, yeah, I changed some of the .asm couple files. And what I've done is I just have one install for under one directory for the Spectrum, one install for another directory for the 2068. They're relatively small installs, a couple meg, I think. So keeping them separate was easy, and just run them locally. So it's not like I've got it globally installed. I just got it installed in two different directories and run whatever the local one is. So I could talk to them, but
You should,
I'm not too
because
sure.
you know it would get potentially wider use than the four of us.
Hey, as long as one person uses it, I'm happy. I did a pre-processor for the Sinclair Basic years ago, and only in the last 10 years that I find out that a few other people actually used it. One guy fairly extensively.
See, I'm telling you.
I wrote that back in 91. So
Speaking of ancient history, have you guys seen there's a whole passel of photos from the 1987 Midwest what is it, Timex Sinclair fair, the one that took place out in Ohio on Flickr. Have you guys seen those?
Yep.
Well, I would expect you have just seen them, Tim. You said you went to practically all of those things.
no, I only went to a few.
Oh, okay.
On the 80s, well, I didn't try, that was my college days. So I think the only one I went to was 89 one. That was in DC. And then they stopped having Sinclair conventions and started using the Computer Fest in Dayton as a meeting location.
Right.
I think the biggest collection of Sinclair people knows that time was in the Midwest.
Oddly, yes. Yeah.
So a lot of them would go to Dayton. The vendors would go to Dayton. And since I lived in Dayton, that's where I would attend those events. And Keith knows about how I would have barbecues at my house. I think I did that like 3 or 4 years.
Well, there's some pictures of Stewart and Company available in there.
I'd love to see those because I believe my parents actually came out to that. I remember driving in my old blue van, drove out there. It was a hell of a long trip for me. And so, boy, I would love to see it if it happens to have any photos that snuck my parents in there.
Right, I'm gonna put the link in the chat.
Oh, yeah, I'll check that out.
It's actually funny that you bring that up, David, because I've been looking through like time designs from the 80s.
Yeah.
And I've been reading them on my iPad. And there's one of them that covers, I don't know, I don't remember what year it is. I want to say 85, 86, one of the shows, and has some black and white blurry pictures in them. And I was going to ask in this meeting if anyone had any pictures from back in any of those shows.
Well, I think that some of those pictures are from this set. There's a guy named Bruno Florendo who put up a website a number of years ago for the Timex, and is not as active as he used to be. I'm going to share the screen. There it is. Here's what I want. So here's the zebra folks, and you can tell because of the zebra t-shirts, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Stuart, I think you told me that this guy here in the muscle shirt was Jeff Street.
Yeah, that's Jeff Street, and he had muscular arms. His passion was rock climbing and climbing on glaciers and ice. I mean, and that's what he does now. I mean, the last time I looked a couple of years ago, I think that he does that like professionally, rock climbing tours and things like that. I think it's out west somewhere. But yes, he programmed more code than I did on both Timex and I believe Coco. We did.
Yeah, you guys did some Coco software.
Yeah, when the what did they call them? When they had those baby on board, yellow diamond signs with suction cups
Yeah.
that everybody was sticking on car windows. I designed a program to print those on bright yellow paper in the days when there were like this, so that the paper that we made had the form feed sprockets on it. So that you could put it in a dot matrix printer. And then I found a source of suction cups and paid someone who worked with vinyl to make little vinyl holders.
Oh,
And
wow.
after you printed the paper out, you folded it up and cut it and you put it in the vinyl holder and used the suction cup. And it was done for the IBM and for, I think, the Cocoa, a few different platforms. I have to say that probably if you reviewed my entire career history, that was the worst business investment I ever made, because it was virtually impossible to cover the marketing costs of that product. So I actually lost a lot of money on it. And only recently, like a year ago, as I was like finally emptying the warehouse of everything, I still had cartons of that yellow paper, and I found a maker space in State College. And actually, I first tried to donate it, and then they had to shut down literally like that a week for COVID. But the last time I was out there, they took it, and they used these boxes of yellow, super bright golden yellow paper for some kind of, workshop with the children in the maker space.
That's funny.
Yeah, I have some of those boxes. I called it the car sign designer, and I'm sure I have a box within, well, this room or the other room. But anyway, but anyway, Jeff wrote a lot of that code, and to my knowledge, he didn't continue his work career as a programmer. To my knowledge, I didn't stay in constant touch with him. Yeah.
So if you look closely at this picture, you can see the third monitor in. There's a 2068 connected to an FDD 3000 system. That's the 3000 sitting under the monitor. But what I just noticed is that the interface unit is plugged in at a 90-degree angle to the computer. It's sticking straight up, which is, I'm not an engineer, but that's a questionable decision right there, Stuart.
Is that normal? Is that how it's supposed to be?
Well, it looks like a right angle twister board.
Yeah, the twister board we supplied with the disk systems was flat. It was
and it was huge. It was
yeah,
like,
it was huge.
Yeah. But it went
because
in,
we intended to have an RGB video output on it.
Right.
But it didn't work. It was a Timex circuit diagram for it that was in the technical manual.
Yeah.
But there was a problem with the layout of the board and it just didn't work.
Oh, okay. And I can see one of those trackballs, Stuart.
What?
On that second system in front of the second monitor is one of those trackballs.
Oh yeah, there's a Wyco trackball.
Yep.
And the first person in the zebra t-shirt, which we didn't make those t-shirts, we found some zoo in the United States had this t-shirt with 2 wrapping zebras around it. And I believe that's my mother there. So I got to show this photo to my brother.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that does look like your mother, Stuart.
Yeah, I think that was my mom. I don't know who the second person in the middle is. That's a tall person, right? That person looks big. I don't think they were on my team. They, but
and who do you think that is past Jeff? It's really hard to tell.
Yeah, I'm trying to blow up that image.
It doesn't get much larger, unfortunately. It's yeah.
By the way, I chatted with Jeff Street on Facebook 2 weeks ago.
Wow. Okay.
And he wanted to call you, Stuart, so I gave him your number.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, he worked hard, and we were only 5 people. Basically, the crew is Al did a lot of customer interface, including running a bulletin board. That ran on a TRS-80, that electronic.
Yeah, that was the
bulletin board?
Model 4.
Yeah.
That was the
so-
Model 4. If you look at the Zebra on TV videos, you'll see me in one of the videos updating a telephone list of Timex related bulletin boards.
Right, so that was one of the ways we communicated, and Tommy, unfortunately, Tommy G, passed away like about 10 days ago. Tommy worked for me, and Tommy was somebody, I guess I connected to both Tommy and Al, kind of, they knew each other, and so I got somehow connected to them both. Al could tell the story, but it goes back to like, before I had Zebra, I made a couple of products for
Was it
other-
TRS-80,
yeah,
Model 1, you made the music box,
yeah, I made a
and
music
then you had the rhythm box,
right.
and then you also had an S100 version of the.
You had a board that plugged into, it was basically a DAC that you could use with a speaker on it. And yeah, I was interested in electronic music. And so I had a couple of early products. And I used to go to the Trenton Computer Festival. That's probably where Al, found me, and we found each other. And then there were other clubs. And but anyway, Tommy was the person, Tommy was the kind of guy, like, no matter what electronic product he bought, he wanted to modify it in some way. If he had a television, he decided he would like to put it on the ceiling so he could lie in his bed and watch it or something. He was very inventive and driven to do that. You didn't need much to spur his in a direction to help with a product design. So I designed some of the circuits and laid out some of the printed circuit boards, but Tommy was very helpful with an awful lot of that stuff. And Al influenced the products also because he was the old, well, I didn't really have my eye that much on other products at the same time, but Al always had a look out at what was going on Atari, what was going on, on these other products, what was going on in the Coco. We did know about the Coco because when Zebra started, it was, I had initially partnered with somebody doing products for the Coco, but Al and Tommy influenced things a lot by saying, "Hey, we could do this." As a matter of fact, one of the things that kept the bills paid and the lights on after Sync magazine stopped circulation, printing, publishing, we were losing, other than the mailing list, we could still do mailing lists. We actually had 15,000 people we could send US mail catalogs to. But without Sync, it became, eventually we had to close. But what kept us going is that trackball you referred to in there. As I was digging through my old folder to see my Timex, what I had on Timex Portugal, I came across the invoice for those trackballs. I bought about 10,000 of those trackballs. And what we did is we modified them with a simple board the size of a postage stamp, I think, so that we could find a model computer that still had a market for them. And even after I closed the Zebra storefront in Woodhaven, Queens, I took those trackballs out to State College, Pennsylvania, and my brother had square footage in his stereo store, TV store. And I actually had an employee, I think, for at least 2 years doing nothing but modifying Wicco trackballs from one to another. And somehow I had a channel to sell them, and they sold. So
Yeah, we were modifying trackballs for the Magnavox Odyssey.
Really?
And if I'm wrong, Stuart will tell me, but I seem to remember that we bought inexpensive IBM mice and used the boards in the mice to modify the trackball to work on a PC.
Okay.
I still have one for the Coco. I have one for the Atari ST. And just by switching around a couple of wires, it also worked on the Amiga.
I
So
think the Amiga was the big market where that continued, that managed to do this. So a lot of the Zebra history is about buying surplus stuff. And yeah, and yeah.
the other thing that Zebra lived on for a while was Coco Graphics Designer Plus, because I had noticed that Printmaster was very, very popular in the Apple II and IBM PC world. And there was no such product for the Radio Shack color computer. So Tommy and I wrote the first one, which was called the Greeting Card Designer. And all it did was greeting cards. And then Jeff rewrote it and gave it a Mac-like interface. And that became the Coco Graphics Designer Plus eventually. And now use a Coco mouse, and it would work kind of like a Mac. It was very, because a big popular program back then, there was a nearby company called Colorware.
Yeah.
That was the street, and Colorware sold Coco Max, which was a Coco drawing program that had a Mac-like interface.
Yeah.
So we made the Coco Graphics Designer Plus with a Mac-like interface. And I hope it's okay for me to tell this story, but the day that Tom and I were finishing up the Coco Greeting Card Designer, Stuart was like, no, forget it, Al, don't write the manual. This is not going to sell. We're not going to release it. Forget it. It's not going to make any money. And I said, no, Stuart, please, we're so close. Just let me sit down and write the manual. And I had Coco with a monitor next to the PC with WordStar. And I typed out the manual. And the first reviews of the Greeting Card Designer, the thing I'm proudest of, is that they said the manual was wonderful. And I really kind of enjoy having gotten that praise, even if they didn't know I wrote it and it doesn't use my name. It's just nice to know that someone noticed the job I did on the manual.
That's awesome.
And,
Yeah, I just found a list of Wicco trackballs.
Oh, dear Lord.
The numbers are staggering. Texas Instrument trackballs, 5,822. Odyssey, I guess, trackball. OD, what could that be? 385. AP, what would have that been?
Apple.
Apple, 3,600. Radio Shack trackball, 2,600. So this thing totaled like 11,000 trackballs, and we got them, and we didn't really sell them for the computers they were for, I guess. But
yeah, we put a
didn't
sticker
make
on
any
the
for the
box.
Valley Arcade.
No,
Hey,
but we put stickers on the box to cover up the computer that they were originally made for.
what's interesting
posted-
about what you said is you mentioned the word Magnavox, and I'm wondering if that was somehow adapted for the, I don't know if you even remember, but for the Odyssey 2 or something like that. Like
it was for the Magnavox Odyssey.
it was it? Okay.
Greg posted a link to Cocopedia. I wrote that Zebra.
It's a small world now.
Yeah. What did I want to say? We also had a program for the 2068 called Tech Draw that Jeff wrote. It was a drawing program, and we created. Oh yeah, that's the car sign designer.
yeah,
As far as I know, it was IBM, Commodore 64, Coco, and I think maybe Apple. And
Al, did Jeff do Tech Draw Jr.?
he must have, because he was very quick coding. He wrote stuff very quickly.
Interesting. Was that in machine language or?
Yes, he
Wow.
worked with assembler.
Okay. And did he write that on the 2068 or did he write it on something else and cross compile it?
I think he wrote it on the
question.
2068. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember. He probably had to write it on the 2068 because we didn't have the emulators and all the tools to make tape files.
Right.
have today.
I suspect I mean, since you guys were using TRS-80s, you probably were using a similar on there because that was a Z80 based system. Like that was really common back then for people to use
Yeah, no,
TRS-80s.
we didn't have a TRS-80 in the lab. The lab at Z
Oh.
Systems, the store used to be a beer distributor. And the lab was the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Jeff's room was a insulated, like walk-in freezer. So it was quiet, you didn't hear it. Right in front of our store was an elevated line of the New York metro
Subway.
system.
Yeah.
So it could be noisy when the train came by, but he had the quietest spot for sure. It did have
Yeah, you can
I
see
think it had a big glass window, so I mean,
Yes.
you feel connected.
You can see it in the Zebra on TV videos on YouTube. There were 2 videos that I posted. I think I spoke about them a couple of meetings ago.
Yeah, I just posted a link a few minutes back to both of those. And it's in the chat. You'll have to scroll back to see it, but it's there.
So I wonder, Stuart, are you going to make some signs that say TS 2068 on board or anything like that for us all?
I think I gave everything away. I think I gave the holders and the paper.
Oh,
and
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
everything.
I have a case of holders, I have a case of paper, and I have the Coco and the IBM and Commodore 64 discs. But I don't have access to them anymore.
I actually had one of those. Someone gave me one of those little card things that says Timex Sinclair user on board. So I did
Oh.
have one.
That's awesome.
Also, I think those things became such the rage that one by one, most states outlawed them. Yeah, you're not supposed to, people still sometimes block their windows. But I think I remember sadly hearing within the last month that one of the black men who got shot to death by a policeman recently in a stopping of a car was because his window had some little thing hanging on it, and that was sufficient to have a traffic stop. There was an article also in the Times about how rural townships try to have the police make money by using anything that's, like against the law, however minimal, like having a baby on board sign to do a traffic stop, because they make money on the fines, and how it's led, these traffic stops are leading to unfortunately escalated incidents. And so that desire to make money is leading to deaths. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to get into politics,
Now-
but be
now
careful
this is-
with the baby on board sign.
Yeah, the car sign designer was written, and I was no longer working for Zebra at the time. And what the plan was to have all the versions available at the same time, and then sell them through a bookstores like Walgreens, or not Walgreens, Walden Books, or Barnes and Noble. So Stuart did not release them as they were completed. He wanted all of them to be done as one set and then release them all together. And sadly, by the time they were all written, the baby on board fad had passed.
Also, I got a bit of wisdom a little too late from Sue Currian, owns SoftSync. And she made a lot of money. She made a few $1 million on SoftSync. She got a programmer. She had a great personality. She used to be a model, fashion model, I think. And she was very good in business. And when I sat down with her, because I knew she had distribution for some of her products, wide distribution, she explained to me how things worked and why I was doomed. She said, basically, all of these big stores, that carry like Timex software and other things like that, the chain stores, if it's just a Kroger or something, they all expect return rights on their products. So you need an entire product line. Like the contract will literally say, we have the right to send back 10%, let's say, of anything we buy in value. So once you had any kind of track record and you had a product line, and you introduced a new product, they know it was new, no risk for them whatsoever, because, well, we're selling 9 products and we'll introduce a 10th, even if it's a complete dud, we have complete, no questions asked, return privileges for stock. And she said, like, you won't even get a buyer to look at you with a single product usually. You know, they want to see a product line and a brand, and they want to see these unconditional return privileges. Anyway, I only met her I talked to her on the phone numerous times, but I think I only met her in person once, and it was memorable. It was very interesting. And as I said, that was the worst. That was about the car sign, the designer trying to get that into distribution. That was the worst thing financially, at least, that I ever did. I think I lost like 50 grand or something. Just designing that box and then producing the box in color was like $5,000 or something. And running an ad in, I think it was Popular Electronics or some magazine that was like a tiny little ad, was thousands of dollars and didn't bring in a single sale.
Wow.
So anyway,
Well,
you win some and you lose some, you know, what can I say?
Didn't Timex just have problems all on their own, just getting their computers into the stores, even though they were gigantic? I mean, they couldn't even get the Timex computers into the stores.
Well,
that
no,
already had
Well,
their
they all had, they did have entry in all the drugstores, at least. Like, you know, if Kroger had a drugstore department or was a drugstore, they already were doing their watches and their clocks. So they had salesmen in the field, and they had probably, like I'm saying, they probably had those return privileges. They knew if they didn't sell, they have the regular channel to get all their money back or a credit. So but I don't know what problems they had getting to places that they, I don't know what doors they knocked on that they didn't get into. David, if you could find that guy who was the salesman for Timex to tell us about the things that they tried and didn't work, that would be interesting.
So I did talk to Margot Murphy, who was, was a marketing person at the time that the 1000 was launched, right? And they had, like you said, they had all the drugstores, and they had all of the, all of the watch outlets, right? And the clocks and the health monitors and crap like that. And Margot made a couple of interesting points. One was that big department stores like Nordstrom wanted to be in on the launch of the 1000, right? But Dan Ross was like, we're going to send this out to all of our traditional channels, right? And then we'll talk to Nordstrom. And so they did. They pumped it out to the drugstores and, all the places that you could go buy a Timex watch. And then, when he went to talk to Nordstrom, they're like, F you, pal. You missed your opportunity. We wanted the exclusive, we didn't want to be, competing with whatever was available then, with Walgreens or something like that. But they were also, in Kmart and right, Neil, Rexall, and places like they had a little catalog that you could get of all the products, and it would tell you that there was, how many cassette tapes were in a box or whatever. And then there was this display unit that you could purchase for $300. You had to supply your own black and white TV, but you could buy from them this $300 kiosk to stick at, the end of the jewelry counter at Kmart, which did happen. I remember, seeing one of these things. They did well, in all those retail outlets, but because they were Timex, because they were huge and they already had a gazillion salespeople. But she did a lot of research in terms of, the package design and in terms of the size and how it would fit on the shelves and what it would look like. It was pretty fascinating to hear her talk about the whole marketing experience. I should ask her if she can come hang out with us one night.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
That would be pretty nifty.
The Timex 1000s were also sold to technical schools. I think I mentioned that, the kits. Yes, 81 kits were sold to technical schools. And Timex 1000s were sold to timeshare companies. You'd go to a lunch and you'd learn about timeshares, and as a parting gift, they would give you a Timex 1000.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just came across a listing in, I think it was in Byte magazine for a like a conference in, say, 1982 for managers to learn about personal computers, right? And the thing was $700. It was out in California, and one of the takeaways was the Timex. You got the Timex 1000 with your with your $700 attendance fee.
Well, you paid for it there, didn't you?
You did.
Almost all the 1500s were sold for the tech school, the ones that come in the case with the programming manuals that you see all over the place. Almost all of those were for tech school. They advertised in the magazines.
Yeah, that must have been a big expense for them to put together all those booklets and, but yeah, those things, I've seen those things turn up once in a while. Go ahead, Al, sorry.
One of my regrets is going to a Trenton Computer Festival somewhere around 1980. And the ZX80 was being sold there. And I had a choice of buying a ZX80 or a disk drive for my TRS-8 Model 1. Sadly, I bought the disk drive, which never worked, and ended up getting junked. So I blew my money on a disk drive that didn't work. Stuart was at that show demonstrating the music box and the rhythm box. And to this day, I regret not getting a ZX80 because it would have been nice to have.
Was that a real floppy
Never
or a
too
stringy
late.
floppy? No.
No, it was a real floppy.
Yeah, okay.
Manufactured by MPI.
Oh, I remember them. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see some of their floppy drives in the Atari 1050 drive.
That's right. Yes. Having taken apart one or two 1050s.
I have to say, those were fun days back then. I really miss that. Computers today are just not the same.
I had a similar thing with buy one or the other. Was I did some work for a local hang gliding shop, training school, and worked out a deal. If I bought a hang glider, they'd give me free lessons to my hang one rating. And I was like, hang glider, Sinclair QL, hang glider, Sinclair QL. I went with the QL. Luckily I did. I had it for a long time, but not sure what happened if I bought the glider though.
Did you ever get your QL1 rating?
My hang rent? No, actually,
No, QL1.
Never. Oh, I see what you got. Yes. I would say for the QL, I'm probably like a hang 3 or 4, which hang 5 being the highest. I'll leave that for Dylan to be, or the other guys. So.
Oh yeah, right.
I
did take lessons, one day lesson with a hang glider. It was actually a lot of fun, but in college I can afford a computer or afford a hang glider. One that can afford both. So.
So
by the way, going back to typing in programs, I just wanted to put in real quick. There's a replacement ROM for the Spectrum that allows you to type in the keywords rather than the one key keywords.
Well, Jack Doheny did a replacement ROM for the 2068 that allowed you to do that too.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Can I burn that to a cartridge?
Keith knows about that. No, is it a cartridge? No, I think it's a stick it in your computer ROM.
It's an actual ROM. Yeah.
Keith, do you recall you mentioned that in one of your documents?
Yeah, he sent me the source code and the finished software, but I used it in the stuff that I wrote. I never had it burned in as a ROM.
Okay. Okay, cool.
So I wanted to ask about those 1500s that were sold to trade schools or what have you. You were saying they came with special manuals. Were they something that each trade school made for themselves, or this is something that Timex made, or do you know? I don't
I believe
really
it's the
follow.
trade school. You can see advertising saying, you want to be an engineer or
Mhm.
hardware guy, whatever, buy our training lessons. Oh, we'll send you a free computer too. And it came in a plastic briefcase, the 1500 and so on, and their manuals. And I believe, I don't think that was the computer side. How to build computers. On the electrical side, they sold a ZX81 kit and then did their own guide in how to build the ZX81 and probably explained what the different parts did as part of the training course. So it was something that those individual training companies did. I remember
Okay.
seeing the ads all the time.
Well, that's better than the CPU trainers that would have like the 16 buttons or whatever, so you'd program in straight machine language rather than even assembly language or something. So that's much nicer.
You think about
We
like
had those 1500 plastic cases at Zebra. I don't know if we sold them or not, but I remember that we had them. And they would fit a 1500 or a Spectrum. And you had room for the power supply and some tapes.
Yeah, you're talking about the 1050 case, Al.
Yeah, yep.
As a matter of fact, there's a picture of it. And this was one of the nifty things that I thought was a great use of it. You could turn it into a keyboard. That black thing with the handle right there, that's a 1050 that somebody hacked a keyboard into.
Oh, interesting. How about that?
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
And if you put the 1500 in it, you've got a portable computer.
Yeah. And Tim, there's a QL with 8 things hanging off the side of it.
The first one's going to be expander RAM, a 512 expander RAM, because I had one.
Yeah.
And it looks like there's just a single floppy controller. I
Okay.
eventually went to, I think, a Trump card or gold card. So I actually gave someone else my expander RAM.
Yeah.
My fun was I had to write a program in Pascal. I ran out of memory, bought the expander RAM, but I couldn't afford the controllers. I had to just run the expander RAM and still run the micro drives. And then took it all in, packed it all up, hauled it to college to demonstrate to the professor about what I did. So.
Back when Pascal was taught in colleges.
It was the primary language in the 80s.
It was, yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I had friends, at UMass who did that.
Use Pascal for what do we use it on? PDP-11, I think. We used it also on a CPM machine, run Turbo Pascal.
Turbo
for
Pascal,
graphics class.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
Turbo Pascal was really hot at the time.
Yeah, it was.
So cheap.
Yeah, and good. It was a good Pascal. I remember that.
For the QL, I bought Metacomco, and they actually had an office here locally, and I actually pinged them once on a bug I found.
Does anybody remember the name of that? One of those trade schools that had the cases? It was National Education something, I think.
Sounds close.
Institute, maybe. I'm looking for one of those ads. Were they in?
Maybe it's National Institute of Technology, NIT.
Right. Okay.
And then in Manhattan, there was the Albert Merrill School. They bought a lot of ZX81 kits from us.
National Institute.
Radio Shack tried to get in on that business. They actually sold kits of the Radio Shack color computer.
They did?
Yep.
That's crazy. Okay.
There are pictures online. I have pictures of the kit. And they also tried to get into Sears and Kmart. They made a secondary brand of the color computer called Tandy Data Products. So there was called the TDP 100.
Mm-hmm.
Was this based on a Coco 1 or Coco 2 or 3?
It was a Coco 1.
Yeah, it was the silver.
It was an F board, but it was a white case. It looked like the Coco 2, but Coco 1 sized.
I remember Sears trying that in Sears. I remember Sears carrying the Amstrad typewriter thing, CPM based.
Well, I'll dig up one of those ads. It'll take me a bit to find it, but to your question, Adam, it appeared that whoever it was sourced their own briefcase. They put together their own sort of learning books. There was, I think, like 15 of them in there, and it was a sort of silver and blue cover, and they usually sold it with the 2020 cassette player and maybe a couple cassettes. Oh, here we go. Neil says National Education Corporation. That sounds about right. The Technical Literacy Series was the name of the booklets.
And was this done before the Timex was like not being sold by Timex anymore because they were all overstock kind of things and inexpensive, or was this done early on?
No, I think it was done toward the end.
Yeah, I think it was concurrent, but sort of like Tim said, towards the end. I remember seeing the ads in, I don't know, I want to say like Popular Electronics or something. Does that sound right, Tim?
Something like that. And then once Timex got out in February of '84, the prices hovered for about a month, I think, and then everything went off an edge to the point where I think you could get a ZX81 for $10.
Yes. Yes.
They were closed out. And then there was a company here called Herb's Discount Software. They were actually in a roll-up type of storage facility running their store. And they had they basically went and bought all the closeout software they could and had bins and bins of one Timex Sinclair, TimeWorks, and then the original Sinclair software, TimeWorks, I think was the other one, came with green and white, just bins of it. You want 1,000 of the casino game? Hey, we got 1,000. Come on in.
Oof.
Just tons. And again, it would be the same game in box after box, maybe the same 5 ones. It just dig through it all. It was a good place to go to.
Narrowing it down.
Get that Google foo going.
But actually, I'm searching through archive.org, which has scans of things like Computer World and.
Neil said he had copies. We can always have him scan it.
Yeah. We'll make Neil do the work.
Yeah.
That kind of reminds me of another company in the Timex market back then, was E. Arthur Brown.
Yes. Yes.
I think we used to sell them trackballs.
Yeah,
At one point, they found their own trackball and modified it. So they were selling their own trackballs at one point, but we were selling them the Wiccos in the beginning.
Oh, it looks like Neil agreed to scan everything. He just said okay.
Good luck. I still got a bunch of stuff here I need to scan.
David, I wanted to ask you about something on your website. I was browsing through it today.
Yeah.
And you have the section on periodicals, and it's got tons and tons of listings there. A lot of them, or I don't know if a lot of them, but some of them are at least on archive.org that you have links to. And I've been looking at the Times Design and something Sync or something like that. I was wondering if you guys had recommendations on ones that'd be fun to browse through, because some of them are way longer than I would expect for a newsletter. Some of them are like 50 pages, and that's in the late 87 era.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
Q1s are going to be Time Designs,
Mhm.
Update Magazine.
Update.
Mhm.
Okay.
I know very little about Sinkware News, but those are the two biggest ones. Update was a national.
Yep.
There are some of the user groups have some interesting newsletters.
Mhm.
Time Design was spiffy, looked great.
Right. That's the
Update
one I'm
was-
most familiar with.
Update wasn't bad. I had some of my stuff got published there. If you wrote something up pre-print in a page or whatever, he just basically photocopied it in.
Yeah.
Didn't do any fancy stuff. But it could be 30 to 40 pages for an update, and that was quarterly. SyncLink out of Canada had some good newsletters.
Yes. Yeah, they were good. That was the Toronto user group, right?
Yes, and then
Yeah.
the CATS user group had a good couple, some good newsletters, especially when I was the editor for a couple of years.
If only we had those available. We only have a few CATS newsletters available, Tim.
Yeah, that's in my stack. I
Okay.
have a bunch of timelines in there. I have my bunch of
Oh.
CATS that I got when I was there, and I have a bunch of the SyncLink. The SyncLink would send me copies because I would send them copies of my QL Hackers Journal.
Mhm.
And I think I actually got a hold of Sync magazine for free once because I sent a query in for an ad, and they just started sending me for free. I'm like, I'll drop my subscription then.
So the only one that I would add to that is Syncware News, which was started by Fred Nackbauer, who was a big ZX81 fan. And eventually Tom Woods became involved in it.
Tom Woods did quantum levels. I think he merged the quantum levels with Syncware News.
Are you thinking of Tom Bent?
Oh, that's it, Tom Bent.
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
He did the quantum levels. Yeah, no, Tom Woods is the profile database guy.
All right.
And then he did some other stuff. And so Syncware is a lot heavier on hardware information, but there's a lot of good programming stuff in there. But Time Designs is probably one of the best in terms of after the fall of Sync.
Yeah, Sync is actually pretty good. Tom Sinclair user, and it was very more kid oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Sync had some really good serious articles. There were some good assembly programs, and like one or two of them. One was how to do music out the audio port of your ZX81.
I typed that one in.
I did too. And then the same guy did how to do audio samples.
Yes.
That was like something Lemon or Lennon or something like that. Was his
Lemon,
last-
you're right, Ron Lemon.
That's it.
Yeah, and then he sold his software too. There were some ads, for his other bits of software.
And Sync actually, it was pretty good. It was big and heavy sometimes. Yeah, good magazine.
Well, it was a spin-off of Creative Computing, and Dave Hall was no slouch when it came to putting together a good magazine.
Well, that was the actual magazine though, compared to the newsletters, right? Is that what you're talking about? Sync?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, it was a good quality one.
I think Time Designs was the between newsletter and magazine because it had a nice it was larger, had a nice fold to it.
Mm-hmm.
Update was 8.5 by 11 stapled on one side 3 times, so more homegrown. Same with the other ones, but Time Designs really looked nice. It was 11 by 14, whatever, folded in half, saddle stapled.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really nice. Like you said, it was like 2 color covers usually.
Yes, 1 or 2. I've got copies real quick if you want me to grab one.
Yeah, because some other folks might not have seen them. So Adam, you're looking for stuff to type in, right?
Not the first. Hey, man.
You're looking to get that thumb going again, huh?
Right. Well, I might be able to have better luck typing on the Timex keyboard than my own keyboard without being able to use the shortcuts, right?
Right. Right.
But I was looking at, let's see, I'm looking at my iPad right now, and I've got Time Designs on here, but there was another one that I was looking at on just on my computer, and it was I want to say Harvard Group or something like that.
Oh, yeah, of course. So that was
expensive, very expensive. It was
Syntax ZX80.
Yes. Uh-huh. And that was kind of weird how it flamed out at the end there.
What do you mean?
Well, towards the end, so he was all black and white and of a very specific sort of format, daisy wheel, it looked like. And after, Timex got out, his production expenses must have been really high, right? Because there were a couple of issues where he was like either late or he did some really wacky stuff in terms of laying it out. Like he took his 8.5 by 11 page and in the middle of the newsletter turned it sideways and made it 5.5 by 8.5, 4 up. And that really pissed off folks. They wrote in their angrily worded, letters for issues after that.
Well, it wouldn't be so bad. I haven't seen them, but like if it was just a regular article without something you have to type in, that wouldn't be too bad. But if it was some like a basic program or you had to type in, that would be incredibly difficult to see.
It wasn't so much that, it's just that, he also really raised his, I mean, again, this is where I'm speculating about his production costs, that he really raised his price point, and again, folks were really upset, and there must have been something else going on in publishing at the time, because he said, well, Newsweek really raised their prices too. And this was, what, 84-ish, 85. I have no idea what was going on then.
But they're not really equivalent either.
Like, they're not really equivalent.
No.
That's correct. Yeah.
But if any of you people out there watching this, I don't know if you've had a chance to go through some of these newsletters, because this is, my first time really digging into them. And I wouldn't even know about them if it wasn't for David's website. So they're really fun because they're much more personal than like a magazine is on every level, because you hear people complaining about their kids and keeping them awake or whatever, not being able to do what they want to do on their computer, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't really be usually published in a magazine. They'd be like, we're editing that out.
Well, and there was take a look at Synchroset. So Synchroset.
Could you say that again? Say that again.
Synchro, SYNC.
Okay.
Let me back up a sec here to the right page. SYNCHRO-SETTE. So this was published by a guy out of like Chicago or something. It was sort of what we'd now call a zine size, 5.5 by 8.5, and every other, you could get a subscription with a cassette, and every other issue would have this cassette that came with it. Somebody actually had some on eBay a few weeks ago, and I tried to bid on it, but it went for more than what I was willing to pay.
Well, David, if you ever see something that like looks interesting to you, and I might pick it up. I've done that in the entire community before, so that things can get archived. I've picked up a few things and then I just send them off to wherever. Sometimes they have to be sent to me before I resend them. I mean, I don't know for sure, depending on the price we're talking about, but
I don't even know how much it went for. I think I bid like, my max was like $20 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you talking about the cassette. Another thing I had on that I wanted to talk about was there was an ad in Time Designs in the May-June issue for a cassette magazine for the 2068 called Byte Power. Did anyone know about that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is that archived at all?
There is at least one issue available.
Oh. If you could, I don't know. I'm saying, could you please find it for me? But if you could, that'd be cool. I would like to see where maybe load it up and see what's on it.
Do I not have it listed?
Possibly.
I do not.
I didn't actually look. I only saw the ad this afternoon.
No, you're right. Let me think about this.
There's one thing running around. So I'm seeing is I've got one called Byte Powered 02 1988.
Okay, that's late.
Huh. Yes.
The tap file.
Yep. Shoot.
Has anyone tried it before or loaded it up or checked it out?
Well, I can find out soon enough.
Oh, okay. Are you going to load it up under emulation?
Yeah, on my Linux box. That's why
Okay.
I'm looking differently. All right, let's go here.
If you get it loaded up, can you share your screen?
I'm not, I'm on a different machine, but.
Oh,
maybe I
you're on a
can
different machine.
do something. Give me just 1 second here.
Oh, so Neil wants to know if there's a most wanted list of magazine issues. Yeah, I could actually reverse engineer a list of the things that I have not archived yet. I should do that.
Oh, that takes a lot of time, I will tell you from experience.
Well, so actually it's all in a database. So I can just
Oh.
work backwards from my entire website is in WordPress.
Oh,
And I've created custom post types for the magazines and the issues of the magazines. So I know what I have. And
How can you guys, how well can you guys see that?
oh yeah,
let's see.
yeah, that's
It's playing music. Let's see if I hit a space bar, if it does anything. There we go.
that's cool.
So
And set your printer, yes.
easy enough to do there.
So is that's the one you found on the internet, right?
Yeah, I can't remember where I find. I just basically troll and find things and dump them locally. So I've got a copy myself.
Yeah, yeah. I
Thanks,
remember-
thanks for doing that. I'll check it out maybe this week or something. Just curious.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if
do
you
some-
can't find it, I can just email it to you. It is a whopping properties. Oh, it's 137 KB,
Ah,
140 KB on disk. So
Do
yeah,
they
that's,
even allow you to make an attachment that large on email these days?
I remember the 1 meg barrier years ago, but that's long gone.
mhm.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, I still encounter about a 15 or 20 meg barrier with my work email.
No, don't forget Bill Gates' line. 64K is more than enough for anyone.
640, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I've done a lot in 64, more in 640, yes, but
Well, 64K was the limit of CPM, and it was a very popular operating system for a while.
Mhm. Mhm.
I was actually recently looking at why do the spreadsheets for the Sinclairs suck so much? Well, you look at it compared to like VisiCalc, and they're much better. And they actually did make VisiCalc for the Atari 400 and other computers, but the key thing was the price. Imagine you bought Atari 800 and someone wanted to sell you a spreadsheet for $100. You just spent, that's like a 400 or 500 for the computer. So I think the reasons the ones that were for the Sinclair were, they were retailed for $19.95. No one put any effort in to make them as good as VisiCalc, even though the same amount of memory, the same CPU basically. So it could have been much better, but they really weren't.
Well, on the Atari side, there was like Sincalc, which was reasonable, if I recall correctly.
They had VisiCalc for the Atari too. I used to have it for the.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did it for Atari. They did it for the originally Apple, IBM, Atari. I think it is. I can't remember if they had a CPM version of it, but it was retail was $100,
Mhm.
which was far more than anything else. You mentioned buying $100 for a computer and then $100 for your piece of software, or 250 for the 2068 and then 100 for the software. Yeah, wasn't going to happen. No market there, I guess.
Well, something else that you have to keep in mind there is that those systems all had disk systems readily available for them, whereas you don't really have
Yes.
something like that where you can just. I mean, there were disk systems for the 2068, but not
Never,
a
not from
standard
the
or anything.
manufacturer.
Yeah.
800 did come with a disk system. In fact, I think I have one still running around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
Makes a big difference.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The system's right.
Well, there was OmniCalc, which was ported from the Spectrum, if I recall correctly. I've never used it. I've never looked at it,
I
but
think I have, but if you look at the number of functions, there's only a few. I mean, ViewCalc only had like 2 functions, 3 functions at most.
Yeah.
Whereas VisiCalc had 20, 30 functions.
yeah. Well, I guess we just, weren't using serious computers.
I was a spreadsheet guy years ago. That was my bread and butter in college. So
See, I was a DBase guy.
I did a little bit of that too. DBase 2.
Yep.
Even had worked with somebody this guy had a problem. He wanted to do IBM graphics characters in DBase 2, and DBase didn't support it.
No.
But if you embedded them into the thing, it would support it. It just, you couldn't embed them with DBase 2. So you would take like the other tools, you would draw the screen using ASCII characters. Then I wrote a little basic program that converted those ASCII characters to the right characters for IBM graphics. And then you actually had full IBM double line graphics or whatever. If you wanted a smiley face, you could put a smiley face in your DBase 2 program.
Yeah, I loved the DBase, but it was funny because there was limitations to it, and on CP, especially on CPM.
Zebra originally ran, Stuart wrote a DBase program to do the invoices and mailing labels, and it would print out like something like 5 labels. And it was run on DBase 2 on an Ntsc 8080 with a Z80 card.
Mm-hmm.
Then we went to DBase 3 on a PC clone. And that's, either I or Jane or can't think of the other lady's name. We would take and Stuart's mother, Helen, would take the orders on the phone, and we typed them into the DBase and print out the labels, and then those would go up to the front counter where the orders would be packed into boxes and shipped.
Stuart, did you pay your mom?
No, that's for sure.
We saw her at the festival. We saw her in the picture.
Yeah, I saw her.
Did she get free software at least?
All the software she ever wanted.
And t-shirts.
Not at all.
What Stuart's mom used to do when we
I
were
don't know if
packing
my
orders.
mother ever sent an email in her life. She was a retired elementary school teacher towards the end and had no interest in computers, whereas my father was he was an elevator mechanic, and when he worked, and when he was retired, he was in a club of like stock investors. He was a working class guy, but he liked to gamble. I guess that was it. Stock market was yet another place, instead of like just going to Atlantic City and spending all day nursing $100 playing blackjack or whatever. He was in a group, and he learned that really motivated him to learn how to use computers. So he was sending email, and he had his AOL account, and he followed some stocks and everything. And yeah, he got into computers. I don't think he ever used a Timex computer though.
Stuart's mother used to help me pack orders. I was like a jack of all trades at Zebra. I probably filled every position at one time or another. And what she would do is she would line up like 3 or 4 orders in advance as I was packing boxes. And it didn't bother me in the least, but some of the other employees didn't really like that. They kind of,
my mother insisted, well, she was very focused. She did things very thoroughly, and she was fast. If I were in a car with her, she would let me know that light just turned green and I haven't hit the accelerator yet. That was the kind of personality she was. So I'm sure that it could be a problem working on packaging with my mom, because if you weren't fast, she would be critical, probably. Yeah.
So I have a question for Stuart about, you said your mailing list was like, did you say 15,000 people or something like that?
I think we had 15,000, yeah.
Did you ever send out something to everyone at one time?
There were catalogs. When I did the catalogs, I have some here, and I'm sure they're scanned into, to a couple of sites.
I have a few, but if you want to send me some more.
I don't remember how many I made, but I found a very efficient printer that did catalogs, So, yeah, and this was the format. So this is like 8 inches tall. That's the span of my fingers here. So it's 8x5 format. But what was nice about them is, see if I have one that's actually opened and not still stapled. There are only a few of them, but they put a self-reply, true mailer in the center. So this printer, I was happy to find this printer. So what would happen is we would mail these out, not that often. If we got an order, we might have thrown that in. And then we would get checks in the mail with the orders, and this, had an order form and everything. So that was nice. And I remember that we did get a Mac eventually. Actually, this one looks pretty good, but a lot of the pages, actually, I just did them. So this is 5 inches by 8, and I would do them 8.5 by 11 on a dot matrix printer, and then send that, and they would just photo reduce it. So the font, it's off a dot matrix printer, but it wasn't really that terrible for 1983, actually low tech.
Well, we used to use a program called Fancy Font,
Oh,
and it resembled HTML. And I started on the Ntsc 8080 and then moved over to, we had a televideo PC clone. And we bought the IBM version or the MS-DOS version. And I used that to make catalog pages and even some of the labels for the products.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So
We used every tool we could get our hands on for labor-saving devices. And we did eventually get an an HP LaserJet 500, which is similar to the Apple Laser Writer. And Stuart did get a Mac at one time, because Stuart was very interested in something called Bezier curves, which would help with font creation and whatnot.
Right.
You ever released any products that made use of that technology?
I found it fascinating that you could create curves with such a simple equation. It's like,
Yes.
something about it tickled me.
Bezier had their moment back in 87 or so.
I'll see how many catalogs I have and make sure that you have them, Dave. And if not, scan them in. I don't think there were many. I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say there was 3, but let me look.
Okay.
And we used to have to package the catalogs, segregating them by zip code.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because to take advantage of a lower rate to mail them, like a
Bulk rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done bulk rate. I didn't do 15,000.
I don't remember whether
rate,
the post office came to the store to pick them up or we walked it down to the post office, but 15,000 catalogs was a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The post office was not far. Fortunately, I think we walked them over, but it wasn't far. Yeah.
And we did pack them in the boxes. When I would pack an order, I'd throw a catalog in the box to encourage, reordering.
Yeah.
So, Stuart, you mentioned gambling. Neil reminded me that there was a Greyhound handicapping program for the Timex, and he said that he used to use it. He said it was he used it at a dog track in Florida, and he says that for place bets it was good for 80%. It's pretty funny. So there's a real world use for you, Adam. Gambling.
All right. Well, that's good news. Good news.
It doesn't get any more real world than that.
Yeah. We do have some casinos here locally in Albuquerque, even here in town. Well, technically not in town because they have to be on the Indian reservation, but I'll head over there tonight after the call and I'll give you a call at 6 a.m. or something and say like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I need a loan.
Send money.
Another interesting Zebra product that we sold, we adapted koala pads.
Yes.
68. Tommy designed or Stuart designed, or they did it together, an A to D interface. and you could plug in the color computer version of the QualiPad into the 2068. And that would work with TechDraw. And we had an idea to do a coloring book program where you would load a black and white line drawing on the screen, and you could pick colors and color it in. And we thought that would be good for children to use.
So
That
Al,
was
it's
called
funny you
Zebra
mention that because I had one of those. I bought this really complete 2068 system from a guy back in the 90s, and he had the floppy disk system. He had the QualiPad, and I remember looking at the interface and thinking, oh, I can plug my Coco joysticks into this because it was the right connector. So here's a weird thing. In like one of the very first issues of Syntax magazine, there's an article, a brief article about how somebody was going to make a touchpad that was going to interface to the ZX80, right? And nothing came of that, except that the guy who developed that thing went on to develop the QualiPad. And I don't know how I managed to trace that out, but I did find that, I found that piece of information.
Yeah, those were fun. I never actually had, well, I take that back. I had a QualiPad, but I never used it because I got it much later. But I used to have the Atari touchpad for the Atari 8-bit line of computers.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it was very similar. Very great tool.
Mm-hmm.
Fun to use.
Did you have Rembrandt, the paint program?
The program? No, I had Atari Artist.
Okay.
That's I don't remember if it came with it, but it came with it when I got it. Yeah.
Rembrandt was a really nice paint program that was through the Atari Program Exchange, I think.
Yeah, I'm actually familiar with it. I just haven't used it. Yeah, it's supposedly considered the best one on that other platform, that other one.
Well, and it would make beautiful prints on the Okumate 10.
Oh, did you have a color printer then?
What's that?
You had that color printer?
Oh yeah, I had back in around 80, 87 or so. I had an 800 XL, and I had that pad and Rembrandt and an Okumate 10.
That was like it printed on like wax paper or something weird, right?
You would get really smooth paper, and the ribbons themselves were kind of waxy. And there was a 3-color ribbon, and it would print yellow, blue, red, and then do its advance.
Okay.
It was a nice printer for doing color cheap.
Yeah, I remember the ads in the magazines. I've never seen one.
Yeah, it was nice. And unfortunately, God love you, try to find a ribbon these days.
Right. Too bad it can't be printed or 3D printed, but that's not something. That's amazing how people are 3D printing parts for all their stuff, even like strange things for printers, little parts here and there just to repair their printers.
We had a product that we called the Zebra A to D. And I think what happened was it had 2 ports, and it was used an 8-bit DAC, A to D actually converter, ADC 0809, which was really popular back then.
Yeah.
And what we did is, I think the only difference between it says in here, in the documentation with the schematic and everything, that the only difference between this and what we call the Zebra graphics interface was a couple of pull-up resistors, and that's probably what we use with the QualiPad. This thing had been designed and could take an X and a Y input, and then you just add a resistor somewhere for a pull-up, and I think it was just when you combined it with this. I'll have to look in the catalogs and see if I can put that together. Yeah. I don't think I have a QualiPad, but I know I have some of these kicking around somewhere.
So I found my little blog post about the Innovision Presto Digitizer, and this was in the very first issue of Syntax Z80 magazine in November 1980.
So what am I looking? So that's a teeny tiny touchpad, like it's like 2 inches wide or something.
Yeah, it looks like about 2 by 3.
Yeah.
And this guy worked at Xerox PARC, and came up with this idea.
Well, nothing else ever came out of there.
Well, he was into education, right? Oh, nothing
Okay.
else, right? Yeah. No, there was no good ideas that came out of that.
Right.
And then maybe they were going to do it for the 400 and the 800, which it appears possibly sold. But then he co-founded Koala Technologies, which released the Koala Pad. So it only took him 3 years to get a commercially viable product out of this thing.
Well, I mean, I don't know. In my opinion, I remember the Koala Pad seemed very popular. I knew people who had it and stuff, but I don't know whatever happened to them. What do you know?
In terms of the company?
Yeah.
It went the way of the Alps touchpad as well. I don't know if you remember them.
I don't.
Oh, okay. That was Alps was a company that made keyboards and printers, and they also made a keyboard with a built-in touchpad. This is pre-laptop touchpads, I think, but not by much. And so you could buy a little touchpad for and it was little. It was like this big, for your PC or your Mac. Same idea, but you could use your finger.
And you'd put it to the side of your keyboard then, or just use it? Okay.
Yeah. Real quick before we do anything else, I talked to Tom Woods, the guy from Sinclair magazine and the database, the ZX profile database, and he will meet with us in the future at some point. He's on some sort of cross-country trip right now. And I got an email from a guy named Will Collum, who apparently was a programmer at Timex from 1983 to mid 84. And he said he worked on the 1500 and the 2068. I need to call him and encourage him to, come and join us. Hopefully he will. I think he'll be happy to come and join us for at least one night. So that'll be an interesting session coming up.
David, maybe you guys talked about this before I came on, but you actually said you had something you wanted to ask about the Timex computer 2068, or did you already ask that?
Oh yeah. So Jack Boatwright and Carl both said that they'd help me out, because there's 2 or 3 folks in Europe who've asked me about a converter doodad for their Timex computer 2068. So the Portuguese ones, right? And those have RGB and bright on the expansion connector. And it turns out they also have composite sync, and they've got the video signal, but they're in different locations. And so I have no way of testing this. But I said, I'll try to put together something to see if we can make a doodad for the guys in Europe. But I needed a computer to test it on. And so both Carl and Jack said they have the computers, and I can send them thingies to test.
David, are you going to take the RGBI and turn it into composite then?
No, I'm just going to take the RGBI and map it out to probably the Sega Genesis connector, but maybe I can't remember if it's a 9 or 15 pin connector that's standard for those old CGA or EGA monitors.
It's
EGA and EGA 9 pin.
Yeah.
9 pin. Okay, I'll go look it up and find it.
Can you
David,
even get those anymore? An EGA or CGA monitor?
Well, Adam has a monitor. What connector does yours have, Adam? Is it 9?
You're talking about my Amiga monitor, though. I think, or is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, but your Amiga monitor takes RGB, right?
Yeah, so I have the original Amiga monitor from 1985 called the 1080.
Yeah,
it has like the 9-pin serial type connector,
Okay.
But that's the one mine has. But they also there were some other ones that, like, even in the same series, that, like, when you bought it, you didn't know what you were going to get. So you could also, they had the round DINs too. So it depended on one you got.
That
The
weird.
1080 was a relabeled Magnavox monitor.
Was it?
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Interesting.
And we used to use neck multi-syncs.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Back
Was the
then-
multi-sync, was that a 9 or 15 pin connector?
That was a 9-pin
A
connector.
9, okay. So it's
Yeah,
a
those would-
CPA.
Those ones would also sync down to 15 hertz, so or
Right,
kilohertz.
that's-
So you
that's
could
CPA standard.
watch regular TV on them or use your computer. I have experience with them
sure.
on the in the Amiga world, so they were pretty cool. They were even old in the 90s. So
And it was
David.
nice seeing that Jack Boatwright is still around.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, he emailed me before Christmas, I think it was. And
Well,
I
20
had
years ago.
talked to him once, but I want to get him on. He says his computer's not modern enough to do this. He can barely do email.
About 20 years ago, he was doing kind of what you're doing now, David. He was kind of collecting a lot of stuff for the 2068. Did, and then sort of dropped off the face of the earth for a while.
Yeah, yeah. I remember reading in
Clive Live?
thank you. Yes, the whole saga of Rod Gowan getting out, and people trying to raise money, and and Jack ended up with a lot of stuff. It sounded like.
I want to say Jack lives in Oregon up there near where
does.
Rod was. Okay.
Yeah, he's up in Oregon, and still doing his thing. And I talked to him, and he like Carl, he built his own cardboard DEU and spray painted it silver and spray painted some micro drives silver. So
David, the TC 2068 has a Spectrum bus,
that's right.
the same bus as the TS 2068, which is why for the disk drives, we had to supply a twister board
Right.
because
Right,
the
that's a-
little silver
and that's-
interface box was
and
meant
that's part
for
of
a
the
TC
problem.
2068.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, is that the signals are in different places, and I have no way of. I mean, I suppose I could build a twister, but I don't have a bright signal on the 2060, the Timex Sinclair. So I'm going to have to, sort of build it for spec and hope it works. Hope it works when it lands with Carl and Jack.
And
well,
survives the
I
trip.
know that Carl only got his TC computer semi recently, and I don't know how much he paid for it, but do you want to just pick one up one of these days? I mean, you seem like a Timex fan of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, kind of. I see them on the eBays, and I see them go for $200, and that's like about $80 more than I really want to pay for one.
I gotcha.
It's not that expensive, really.
That's true. That's true.
And you're not like go out and buying a bass boat or something like that,
That's right. That's right. And it certainly won't cut into my my other bad habits. It'll keep me off the streets.
If you use that gambling program, you might be able to get it, within a few days. You'll have the free cash.
Neil, can you send me the gambling program so I can start betting on the dogs?
Are there any dogs around to bet on?
Connecticut? I don't know. Florida?
I know not here.
Maybe I can bet on Highline in Connecticut if they're still doing that. I don't know.
I thought Highlight was Florida, but okay.
There used to be Highline in Connecticut. I remember seeing the ads on TV when I was a kid. All right, gentlemen, it's witching hour.
This is a good time. I'm glad we get together. I guess we got together 2 weeks ago, but we'll get together in another month.
So, yeah, actually, I was thinking this is the first Monday of the month. I was thinking on the third Sunday afternoons, we can do 2:00 to have a time that's convenient for the folks in Europe. It was Sunday that we
would
do.
that mean we'd try to do 2 a month then, or we'd
Yeah.
try to every other month, or do
No, 2 a
a
month.
different date? Okay.
Yeah, you'll have to skip your sci-fi book club.
All right. I see how this is.
Look, are you dedicated or what?
To sci-fi.
Okay, I can understand the sci-fi, yes.
I haven't read any good sci-fi books in years, though, is the problem.
Yeah, our next book up is Solaris. So it's a Russian. I don't know if you guys have seen the movie from the
Yeah,
70s.
yeah. Well, no, but the book, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah.
I haven't read it yet though. That's going to be in 2 weeks, so it's going to be this same day. But if I recall, like we ended up meeting, and I was able to do both in the same day last time. So,
Mhm.
so work around my schedule, will you?
Okay, I'll do what I can. Maybe I'll move it up to 1 o'clock.
Just remember to mention it's East Coast time versus,
I know. I gotta keep remember. I gotta drill it into my head. East Coast time. Also, I think that was the reason why I went with 2 o'clock, because that would be like what, 11 where you are, Tim? 11 a.m.
Yeah, 3 hours.
Yeah, I remember there was some
Yeah.
folks who who sort of ducked out for lunch.
Yeah, and noon here. So
Yeah, yeah. All right, so you gotta eat before you come.
Or eat while we turn the camera off and eat.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, guys. Have a good night. See you in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thanks.